Wow, that ended abruptly. Hey,
Hey,
my friends, this is Andy coming to you live from Yorba Linda, California for Vote, PYL Vote. Voting this November is so important. I said it twice in our logo. I have a great guest with me today. It's Ryan Benton. He's running for City Council here at Yorba Linda. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to give you a little introduction here, and then we're going to jump right into it. That way we can get to the important stuff about why it is you're running and what it is you're going to bring to the city council. But Ryan and his wife both grew up in Yorba Linda, bought their first home here after college. Ryan has a proven track record of service within our community, and he was recognized by the Yorba Linda City Council for being an influential community member whose leadership has played a key role in the city's history. That's awesome. He has been appointed 3 times by past city councils and has served as a city commissioner who helped plan the construction of the new library. That is an amazing library.
Thank you.
I've been there. I've voted there and gone and walked through there. It's amazing. Ryan has also been elected by Yorba Linda twice to serve as our trustee for the North Orange County Community College District, where he was named Community College Trustee of the Year for Orange County in 2017. Now, there's a lot more. But what I would like to ask that you do is, in your own words, tell people what else you've done in our community, and then you can, go even deeper if you want to. But
sure.
It's really important for them to hear from you what it is that you've done in this community.
I'd be happy to. So I've been involved in the city for quite some time now. I've been a library commissioner for the last several years, and like Andy said, I helped plan the library, but also the daily operations of the library. We help supervise those on behalf of the city council. The city council relies on the city commissions to do a lot of the work. So we have the traffic commission, parks and rec, planning, and the library commission. And this just saves a lot of work for the city council to do. Some things still get escalated to the city council, of course, like approving a major project like the library or the cultural arts center. But that's what we're there to do, is really to take some of that burden off of the city council. So for that position, we are appointed by the city council. So I've been appointed twice to that position, the library commission. Appointed the first time and then reappointed 4 years later. I'm actually one of the people who advocated actually having term limits for city commissioners, as well as having interviews every 4 years, because I strongly believe that I need to be the very best every 4 years, and I shouldn't just keep getting reappointed. I remember when I first tried to apply, they looked over at one of the people and they said, "Hey, would you like to do another 4 years?" And she said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do another 4 years, no problem." Well, she had been city commissioner for over 20 years. Wow. And I don't know if she ever interviewed the first time, Andy. She may have been the only one that applied. I don't want to insult her, but yeah. But it's like, you don't really know. And so when people get reappointed all the time, it's just not right, because we have so many people that want to compete to volunteer for our city. Right. So when I interviewed the first time, I think it was against 14 people. And, wow. And you're selected for 1 slot, but there should have been, 2 people, 2 slots, basically. So I'm very happy now that as a city commissioner that you do have to reapply every 4 years, and you have to re-interview every 4 years. That's very important, because, if you're the best for 1 4-year period, you may not be the best the next time. And we always want the best in these positions. So before that, I was part of the General Plan Advisory Committee for 4 years, and that does the 20-year general plan for the city. So I ended up being vice chairman of that committee, and it's a committee made up of 2 city commissioners from each of the city commissions. Mm-hmm. And then there was 4 at-large members, and I was one of the at-large members. And Peggy Wong, who is on city council now, was one of the other original General Plan Advisory Committee members. So she and I served together, and it was an excellent effort there to do the general plan, and it's the main advising document for the city council. It's something that's supposed to guide the city council for almost a 20-year period. It can be longer sometimes. And so we were very proud to be involved in it, and there was a lot of feedback from the community in that process. And so we are also there to help facilitate that. We had professional consultants that guide us through the process, but we hashed out every major issue, and we are a very diverse group. Kind of covered all ends of the political spectrum, but we all loved Yorba Linda very much. And so it was an excellent experience, which is really my introduction. This is over 10 years ago now, mm-hmm. To being very involved in the city. Other than that, I've also been heavily involved in the schools. I was a member of the school site council locally. I was also the only dad on the PTA board. Please join the PTA dads and get involved in your board. But the moms are awesome. But I was the only dad for a lot of years there, and really enjoyed that as well. So before that, I would say that I was also a wrestling coach for one of our high schools when I was in college. I got to coach for 3 years as well, and that was a lot of fun for the Placentia Yorba Linda School District. So I've been involved in the community for quite some time. My wife's heavily involved in the community as well, more on the church side. I do more of the government work, cities and schools. But I'm very glad to be here. I've been ready to go for city council for a long time, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit.
Wow. There's a lot there. I guess it would be safe to say that you know about every crack and crevice in the city.
I know a lot. I definitely know a lot, and I'm still, learning every day because I've been ready to go for a city council position for a long time, but I'm meeting with the city manager. I mean, I want to be ready to go on day one where I'm an instant contributor, and I want to be up to speed on everything I can be. They probably can't tell me everything going on in like closed session because that's confidential, and that deals with a lot of our legal matters, real estate transactions, and that sort of thing. But they're telling me everything that I need to know right now, and answering every question I have so that I'm ready to go on day one and I can instantly help.
Awesome. Those of you that are watching, or even if you're watching the replay on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, or even Rumble, we're on right now, please comment or ask a question. If we're live, when you ask the question, I'll be able to ask Ryan the question you have about his running for city council. And so, what's interesting is that I was approached to run for city council, and I go, there's no way. I don't know enough. And after listening to you, I'm so happy. I'm so happy I didn't run. But it sounds like you could have ran for city council a long time ago. So why this time, this November, did you decide that you were going to run for city council?
Well, in the past, I've worked on some of the city council elections. I've been involved, and my friends, I'm friends with everybody as a city council member. I really appreciate their support. I've always been ready to go in my community. As a Placentia Yorba Linda school graduate and as a community college graduate of the North Orange County Community College District, and as a member of city council or the city of Yorba Linda growing up, I was interested in all those boards. I've always been interested in every single one of them. And a lot of people specialize in one area. I know a lot of people on the water board who are water engineers or something. And so they're very specialized in that particular area. In my case, I've been very specialized in both schools and city operations. The fact is there was an opening for the North Orange County Community College District trustee, and it was the first time that position had been open in 30 years. Basically, there was the incumbent who I replaced. He decided not to return. He would have been very hard to beat had he returned. He was a very good representative for us. And the gentleman I ended up running against was his predecessor, who decided to come back to try to run against me when he was resigning. And he was a very good man as well. So between those two guys, they held the position for over 30 years. Oh, wow. And so the slot just never opened. So my timing in 2016, when I ran, I was not intending to run that year either. I was actually working on a lot of other things. But the opportunity opened up. The incumbent didn't file it. It got extended by 3 days, and I jumped in the race because that was one of my dream positions I always wanted to have. And now I get to be very involved in the community colleges where I graduated from, which I'm proud of. And I get to shake thousands of hands for graduations, and it's just an excellent opportunity. So that became my primary focus, and now I've been reelected that position. But fast forward to now, I was actually planning on running for Peggy Wong's seat when she was termed out. So that would have been 4 years from now. I fully expected that she'd be back this time, and so I didn't intend to run against her. But she decided to run for judge. And so the position opened up because of that. And that kind of changed everything. It definitely had to move my time frame thinking up 4 years. And I was thinking about it and watching who else was running and talking to a few people. I didn't really talk to that many people, but I talked to some people. And then a lot of people were just asking me, are you going to run? Just like you, they're asking me, are you going to run? And I was just thinking about it. And it turned out that I needed to. In my case, it's kind of rare because there is actually no conflict between the two offices for either the position or the schedule. So in my case, I'll just be busy every week instead of every other week. Every weekend I'll be busy now, but it's basically I'll have meetings every single Tuesday instead of every other Tuesday. So the scheduling works out perfect. Everything works out perfect. I know how much work is involved in the city council. I respect the work, and I am one of those people that gets very well prepared for my meetings.
Yep.
I'm ready to go, and I take it very seriously. But I'm excited. I'm excited about the work. And one of the things, Andy, that real quick that kind of cemented my thinking about I need to run is I actually approached my wife with it, as well, thinking that she'd say, "Oh no, you're not going to do that. There's no way you're going to do that," because campaigns are painful,
Right.
and just even being in the positions and having to prepare for these meetings, and everything. These jobs don't pay much, these jobs
$500.
These jobs don't pay much,
Yeah.
right? So my wife is the most patient person in the world. Anyway, when I told her, she immediately said opposite of what I thought. She said, "Oh yeah, you should definitely run,"
Wow.
And she's not even that excited about me running, but she would just like very much encourage me, because I was kind of talking to her like, I probably shouldn't do this, and she goes, "Oh no, you should," so it was pretty funny. So I don't know if she regrets that now, but I am running, and I'm very excited to be in the race.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to move the mic a little bit closer to you.
No problem.
Because I see the levels aren't as high as mine. So, which you have a great voice.
Thank you.
Used to be a podcaster. That's so interesting because my wife influenced me too. That's why I'm not running.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That was how I expected it to go, honestly.
She goes, "Really?" Not for the same reasons that I also thought, gosh, I just don't, that's not my thing. I know I've spent almost 3 years, maybe it has been 3 years, studying the school boards, and not to run, but I wanted to go in there and help find the best candidate. Because I think my strength is doing this and being a little bit of a voice, and being able to do things I really probably couldn't do as a school board member or even as a city council member.
Yeah, but sometimes those are the people that make really good board members. So don't discount yourself, because I mean, I'm serious, because I was very well prepared to be a board member, even for community colleges, but I've learned a lot in the 5 years. And I'm now, I believe I'm an expert of community colleges, where I wasn't when I started. Now I am really good at it. And I was ready to go as a board member back then. When I filed, I was very confident, and I had all this experience, as a city commissioner and general plan and all that kind of stuff. It all helps. But at the same time, I am light years above where I was 5 years ago now,
Right.
And so, you have all the tools you need to start. And that's one of the things too, Andy, that honestly, I wanted to mention to people is part of the reason I'm running is it's honestly a shame that there's not 10 people running or 12 people running.
Right.
The fact is there was only 2 people running for 2 slots. And I don't want to get into it, but they strongly discourage other people to run. And I don't like that idea, because I encourage everybody to run. If you feel like you can contribute something, and if you have what you think is the qualifications to run, you should. And so to me, it's sad that we don't have a choice amongst a lot of people, especially living in Yorba Linda. You know how many qualified people we have for all of these positions. We have the most qualified people in the world here. And so I'm running for 2 slots, and there's 3 people running, but there could be a lot more competition. And honestly, there should be. And I would encourage that in the future.
Okay. Karen says, "I was hoping to ask a question, but he already answered everything."
Sorry, Karen.
I was going to ask, and I love his answers. She loves your answers. So don't let that discourage you. Come up with another question, or if anybody else is listening, please. Oh, I know other people are listening, but if you could write in the comments, that'd be great. And she says, "Thank you for being so rational and reasonable." And this isn't a commercial for the candidates that are running for school board. However, one thing I found is that the people that were in the school board have been there for years.
Yes.
Some of the people whose seats are open now, and things just are not going the way that the parents that I talk to, which is a lot of parents, don't feel that it should be going, and it's been going downhill for a very long time. And again, I say that because it's necessary and it's the truth. I don't know enough about the Yorba Linda City Council to know if, I know they've been in there also a very long time. But I have seen some things that I used to think about Yorba Linda. Now living here every day, I see that it's not the Yorba Linda that I remember. And I don't know. So
in a good way or a bad way, Andy?
Well, the islands in the center of the road. Yeah. Somebody pointed that at a meeting I was at the other day, and they said, how come they're not watering anymore? How come they're not pulling weeds anymore? There's things like that. You're just seeing it change just a little bit, not knowing whether or not that's a city council issue or not, but I would assume it is. I just want to know what your thoughts are and what it is that you can bring to the city council that's not already there in the people running. And that doesn't mean necessarily I'm asking for you to put anybody down.
Oh, yeah,
but what
no
is it
problem
you
at all.
can do by coming in and giving your expertise or what it is you have?
Yeah, one of the things you just mentioned is a perfect segue. But first of all, I wanted to mention that I'm a big advocate for term limits. And on the community college board, we have the same issue as the Placentia Yorba Linda School District and most educational boards. There's no term limits. And so people can serve for 30 or 40 years. And to be honest, I have some people that I serve with that are over 20 years on my board. And I've seen both strengths and weaknesses with that. One thing I would mention is the strengths. I mean, they have a memory. A lot of them have a memory that really helps us in things like contract negotiations, even union negotiations, lawsuits. They'll remember and they'll pull it out of their filing cabinet. Okay, year 2000, we did this and it turned out this way. And so that kind of stuff you would lose if you have term limits. But at the same time, I'm a big advocate for term limits because I believe 12 years on a board is enough.
Yeah.
And so I did start hinting at that on my own board. And they said, well, we'd be the first community college district to ever have term limits. I said, okay, let's do it. I mean, you're not, you're not selling me, I mean, on one hand, I mean, I'd love to be there forever. On the other hand, I really believe in term limits, and to be so arrogant as to think that there's not somebody else who can replace me is just the wrong way of thinking. We don't have that problem on city council. They have a 12-year term limit. And the board the council currently is very strong. Dr. Beth Haney, Tara Campbell, Gene Hernandez are very strong contributors. They're not up for election this time. And so we're very blessed, I think, overall as a city council. I think we're very strong. But one of the things I wanted to mention is when you talk about the islands not getting watered and stuff like that, we actually have a lot of reasoning behind what's going on with those islands and what's going on with the landscaping and everything. And there's a whole thing there. But part of just the fact that you mentioned that is one of my ideas that we need to do more of is more education of the community, like more things that we're doing, more town halls where we need to be out there in the community more because I see a lot of people that have these ideas or concerns and it's like nobody's really addressing them and they just don't understand like why is it. And I've seen some signs up that said like this looks ugly because we are in the process of repairing. We're changing this, right? So they put some signs out there in some of those areas, but they probably can't get all of them. But the ideal thing would be for us to be out in the community. And honestly, our city manager is an outstanding city manager. We're really lucky, and to the point where if you had a lot of turnover at the city manager position, it's kind of the same thing at the community colleges for the chancellor level. If you have a lot of turnover, if you have a bad one, then you actually lose a lot of other top executives and good quality staff, and they want to go somewhere else, So I think we have a lot of people want to work for him, and they're very high quality people. And so we're very blessed with our assistant city managers and everybody else. But I'd like to see him and the city council members get out there in the community more to talk to people about things like zoning, things like landscape, any questions that they have about safety and security. I know our sheriffs get out there and do public forums, but we need to do a little bit more of that as a city. Probably something the mayor could do because the mayor is always just a city council member that is rotated. And I don't want to discount it because it's an honor to get that position to become mayor pro tem and to become mayor. But ultimately, they're just a city councilman in our city. We're not elected as a mayor or anything like that. So it's just a normal position. And most city council members transition through there. So it's a good thing for like a mayor to do that year or the mayor pro tem. But any city council member could be out there in the community talking to people about their concerns. But I'd like to see it a little bit more formalized where we are doing these places where people know they can approach us. And it's not a political campaign. It's like they're just our normal, jobs. And just go out there and talk to them and say, see what their concerns are. And if you can't answer it right there, get back to them so that they understand what's going on with this specific island. I'm sick of looking at it, or something like that, or what's going on with rezoning, or, I'm against this rezoning, but I'm not against this one, just so we can understand, because there's a lot of projects being looked at right now. And I'm sure we'll get into zoning and all that a little bit more. But I think we need to be out there educating the community, but also engaging with them and getting their direct feedback.
Right. I lived in Brea for a long time before I moved to Yorba Linda, right on the border of Brea and Placentia. And I could always tell what city I was in just by the environment and what it looked like when I was driving down the street, or what it felt like when I was driving down the street. And it's not as clear as it used to be. Yeah. And it's no way of, we live in a very nice place. There's no doubt about it. There's no hiding it. It's a land of gracious living, as it says on our thing. And so there's no way of saying anything other than we obviously pay a lot more. And then when you're paying a lot more, it's almost like going to a nice restaurant. If I'm paying more, I'm not expecting to get a low quality meal. Living here, is clearly based on a lot of people that work hard. Yeah. and have and capitalism, and that's the way that it is. But I've always argued back when I was living in Brea near Placentia, saying, why don't they take a look at what's happening in Yorba Linda and try to do the same thing? There should be no reason. It should be that clear of a distinction.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring Yorba Linda back to where it was very clearly an area that took care of itself and respected, what our city looked like.
Yeah, for sure.
Back to that.
I think there definitely is a transition process. I mean, the good thing about Yorba Linda is we are fiscally sound. That's the most important thing, because a lot of those cities that become disrepair or in disrepair is because they made financial mistakes. And in our case, we don't have that problem. And when I'm talking about we have good city managers, I don't mean that they're just nice people. Like, we actually are paving our roads every 7 years, or we're resurfacing them. We're analyzing every road in Yorba Linda every 7 years. It's on a schedule. And a lot of cities neglect these streets. And so it causes the cost to triple, because you now have to repave instead of just slurry seal, right? So these kind of things, and being actively watching the maintenance schedule and everything else for public works is a big deal. And so that's something that we're able to do that other cities haven't always done. And so they get behind the 8 ball, and then it costs them a lot of money, and then they become in disrepair. So Yorba Linda is in good shape. It's going to get in better shape. And I'm very confident in that. But I think some of these things, these landscape issues are temporary. I know we went to drought tolerant plants in a lot of areas, and more rockscape or hardscape or whatever they call it. So we're making these improvements slowly, and some of them look really good, though. I mean, it is something that had to happen because of the water issues in the state, and how much water the city is using, and how much cost is involved. Right. And our city isn't repiped, or isn't piped twice like Irvine is. They actually have reclaimed water that they can use for all their plants and everything there. And they're one of the only cities, I think, that has the ability to do that. So we can't do that. We have to use brand new drinking water for watering our plants. We have to use the same thing that, no matter if we're washing our cars or watering the lawn or drinking the water, it's all the same high quality water. And so there's no cheap solution for us. Wow. And so that's why they're making that transition.
So we have this thing happening. We've seen signs around the city that's no on rezoning, and there's a bill. Is it a bill, or is it
a measure for this ballot? Yeah,
I know I was saying that
for
wrong.
Properties.
A measure coming up. It has to do with Sacramento basically telling us what it is we're supposed to be doing with our land in our city.
Isn't that nice of them?
So, let's talk about that and what it is that you feel that, is there anything we can do? Are we stuck with what Sacramento says? Is there a way that we can fight back?
Yes and yes. So it is a very difficult situation. The RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers, are assigned by the state. And the state, as you would not be surprised, loves to move the goalposts on us. So the numbers for Yorba Linda was 669 and has now gone up to 2,415 units that they expect us to have, high density units, or added housing, I guess, which would include like backyard units that you can add, or garage units that you can add, and all kinds of things. And but that's a 360% increase for the city of Yorba Linda. And that's not very nice of them. And they're very forceful. The state is very forceful. And so far, to my knowledge, almost every city that has tried to sue them or do anything to fight for their local control, which we all should be fighting for local control, they've all lost, and they've lost a lot of money. So basically, best practices right now, they're saying you should comply with the state. And then secretly, though, I think you need to also resist the state. And Yorba Linda is a small city, so we can't just waste our budget on frivolous lawsuits, or not, I wouldn't say frivolous, lawsuits against the state. But we should definitely fight for what our residents want. And going back to my General Plan Advisory Committee for 4 years, Andy, getting all the feedback from people and from the commissioners too, because we're also residents. The low density heritage was something that everybody wanted to preserve. That's something they all wanted to fight for. And the fact is, our city is running out of land. We're largely built out. So it's very difficult to start cramming in all these high density housing projects everywhere. And our city has done a really good job trying to find these spaces to do it and opportunities to do it that make sense. But we also don't want to change like our commercial properties, because we don't have that many. We don't want to change them to high density, and we don't want to have, we don't want to do a lot of things that would change the look and feel of our city. And the biggest thing I hear about from people that are concerned about rezoning or high density is that they're concerned about their property values. And one of the biggest reasons about their property values isn't necessarily because of the projects themselves, but they're worried about the parking that's going to spill into their neighborhoods. Right. Because we've all seen these neighborhoods, mine included. My neighborhood was built in the 70s. And so they could never imagine that more kids would be staying home till they're 30 years old, and you would have six cars per household and all this kind of stuff. And so we're way above the averages of what people usually use for parking. And so it is definitely a valid concern that people have. And my goal is to keep property values very high. The biggest risk about turning down these projects or to so publicly fight the state is that ultimately the state, what they really want to do is they want to take over our control completely. They want to say, City of Yorba Linda, you have no rights to choose what project goes in there, so we get to choose. That's what they want to do. And so that is something that's why you hear the city council people be very careful about what they talk about and try to be very balanced in their approach, because publicly, if you resist the state, ultimately they want to take it over. Now in Yorba Lindans voted on Measure B so that they have control over that by vote. So the people get to vote on the high density projects and approving them or not approving them and everything else. But we really believe, the people that are kind of in the know with the state, we really believe that ultimately, if the people turn them down and turn them down and turn them down, that the state's going to take control and they're going to basically say, well, this isn't working. We don't care what your people vote. But I think it's very powerful for our city, and especially at least for a delay tactic, that our people get a chance to review and approve or disapprove projects. And I know the city works very hard to try to find projects that will be approved by people that everybody can like. And I know as far as the projects themselves, some of them are, they're beautiful. They're beautiful places. I'm not personally against high density. I'm just personally against high density to an excessive degree in our city that doesn't have space for it. Right. When I go down to downtown Anaheim, or if I'm going by Angel Stadium, I kind of think the high density is neat there. It kind of fits the environment. You got stores on the bottom, you got housing on top, and you can walk to the Angel game or walk to the hockey game, or around
Catella and State College are large thoroughfares,
yes,
near freeways,
yes,
that make it easy to get in and out,
right?
Not like here.
It's very different here. It's very different here. Now, that's not necessarily being fair to Anaheim, because I will definitely say that if our number is 2,400, I don't even know what their number is, but it's a lot bigger. Yeah, so the state's doing this to everybody. But the fact is, there's a lot of open land, not only in California, but even in Inland Empire and other major cities. And they're really to force it on a city like Yorba Linda, which is largely built out, I really don't like. And I think we need to really be careful with that. We need to comply, but we also need to resist when we can. And a lot of that will honestly be done in closed session, because that's where your lawsuits, real estate transactions, and some of those decisions are made. So it's not really public. So I just want you to know that I'm definitely a watchdog for that situation. I definitely want to hear from people that have the no rezoning signs or any concerns. I want to hear you out and understand, like, is there a specific project, or are you just against it in general? And I'm completely understanding, because if we all had our choice, we'd probably not want anything changed, and nothing necessarily rezoned, because people that bought a commercial property, they knew it was going to be commercial. They never expected it to be residential. So it's not like they don't need that value add or whatever change for theirs. That was never guaranteed to them when they bought it as a commercial building. So I think we need to be very careful, just make sure we're doing what's in the best interest of our residents. But certainly having some of the high density projects that we already have hasn't necessarily been a bad thing. And a lot of us would like to see our kids live in this city as well. A lot of people I went to high school with, honestly, have moved out of the city. They live in other states. They live near Temecula, all over the place, because it's just a different lifestyle here when you're starting out buying a home.
Right. Well, we love we have horse trails here and horse property and that kind of stuff. And that I think worries me, because that's the reason we moved here. We have a great lake out here at East Lake Village that my son goes out and fishes. And that's what I'm worried. The problem with the politicians, like the ones that run Sacramento, is that there's always this, hey, we're going to do this, and then it leads to something bigger. It never ends with that one thing. And that's the fear. I'm not so much worried as what it is they're saying to do now, but it's what's going to come next.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, we're going to talk about the pandemic in 1 second, but it's like one thing after another. 2 weeks, or just 2 weeks of to flatten the curve. And it's like 3 years later, we're still, today, I think he ended it, or last night or whatever. I think that dude that's, over there, he said that it's over, but really after 3 years, when you said it was only going to take 2 weeks, that's I think we don't want to see that change because it'll lead to bigger changes in this community. I want to ask you really quick: do you have any ideas of what? And one of the problems is the Savvy Ranch area and some of some of the residents that's out there. One of the locations, or maybe more than one locations, is out there rezoning it, and that has one way in, one way out. That is the problem. If there's a fire, like there was several years ago, there was a lot of trouble evacuating schools out there and people out of there. And now you add another, 400 to 1,000, residents and cars. It's going to be a really difficult thing to get people out of there.
Yes.
So,
well, real quick, you touched on a couple of things that I want to mention if we have time. So the one thing is I wanted to mention, I'm very concerned about the horse properties as well, because a lot of those now, basically the state has almost taken away the city's opportunity to deny these kind of projects. So almost anybody that has a horse property in the back that's currently like zoned for horse property, they can now add another dwelling in the back and kind of convert that property to just add another dwelling unit. Because to meet these RENA numbers, the state is basically limiting what the city can do to stop that kind of thing. And so I would be okay with that, because to me, I'm all about property rights too. So if somebody wants to do that, I'm okay with that. But I am concerned about it being a permanent change, because I want that to be able to stay a horse property, And so it's one of those things that if somebody wants to build a home, but then the next person wants to come and take it out back there and have horses again, then I think that would be different. And I don't know the exact situation there, but the state is very much limiting it. And my dad has a neighbor who's building a dwelling unit in their back, got approved by the city. And one of my dad's biggest complaints is their house is 12 or 15 feet away from my house, but their dwelling unit that they're building is going to be right on the fence almost. So he said it doesn't have the same setback. And I talked to the city and they said there's different rules because it's the state approved. Basically, it's the state. They can't limit it. So you can't, the city that he says right now, the city, you can't even have the same setback and just say, okay, you can have a dwelling unit, but it has to be like lined up with your house. It's like, so now they're going to be looking in my dad's yard. It's just an example though, for me. I mean, it's something he's dealing with, but it's just an example of where the state comes in and where the city is limited in what it can do. And it's just sad. And then what else did you just mention? You were talking about
Savvy Ranch.
Yeah, Savvy Ranch. Thank you. So Savvy Ranch. So these projects do take years to build. And Savvy Ranch is going to go through a major construction project where they're going to actually add a lane there. And so that is going to improve significantly. And it's something the city of Yorba Linda has been working on with the city of Anaheim. And the city of Anaheim, I think, honestly has less motivation to do it than we do, because of our side is the side that gets more jammed. It's way more important for us. And city of Anaheim has got a lot of bigger fish to fry. But they've been good partners. I mean, I think that I've heard they've been good partners, and it looks like this project's going to definitely happen. So they're definitely going to improve that significantly. And they've looked at other opportunities for Savvy Ranch as well. I mean, I've heard people talk about a bridge from the back of Savvy Ranch to La Palma and stuff like that. Now, that would be extremely costly, I understand. And it would be like Army Corps of Engineers would be involved in all kinds of things. So it would
because of that area behind.
Yeah. So it would be a really big deal, but it's not something that's off the table. It's unlikely that we would do it with our budget, but you never know if you get some sort of congressional grant down the road or something like that. Young Kim, hint, hint. So there's definitely things that are being looked at there, and they're not going to just jam up that place and make it worse and worse. It is going to improve significantly.
Again.
And also the current lane, my understanding is the current lane is going to be open during that construction. So there should be also no temporary 5-year, setback.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
You know how it works. They shut down everything to build the next thing. But this case, it should all be open while they're doing it. And it should be pretty smooth for people as a transition. And then all of a sudden the traffic will get better.
Yeah. Well, they did build all those bridges at like Lakeview and Imperial It and where else did they build a bridge? They were like 3 or 4 of them.
Yes.
To get over the train. It was, I have stories about that train. I was a police officer in Anaheim, and that train used to come into play late at night.
Oh, no.
To try to, when there was emergency on the other side of Anaheim,
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be on La Palma, and I'd have to get to
and there'd be 2 trains.
And
one stopping for the other one to go by.
Hey, we can't get there. There's a shooting, and I'm stuck on the other side. It was kind of crazy. So I'm not sure why I went there. Anything else in the rezoning that we didn't discuss? I had a couple questions written down here, but I think we covered most of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always more to talk about on rezoning, but
it's a little bit complicated. But there is a website that is, I don't know if it's Beth Haney put it up or if it's a city website.
I think it's a city website. I mean, they're definitely going to put it up for the election. I think the ballots are, it's already there, but the ballots are going to get mailed, I think, October 10th. So we'll all see our guides, our candidate guides, which will have that measure in it. But they always try to do a lot for educating what these projects are, because I think the city technically takes no stance one side or the other,
Mm-hmm.
but the city council and the city work to find projects that people will support. That's the whole goal. And if they don't, then they're going to go back to the drawing board. But so they try to educate about what these projects are, because people need to know. Everybody's going to have something near them, I'm sure. And so you're going to be voting on all of them.
So this Measure B that's coming up, and I
think that's Measure Z, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Measure B is the one where we voted years ago, where we get to vote on rezoning. So Measure B is the reason we're voting on these kind of rezoning issues. That's the original.
See, that's why I'm still
no, that's okay.
And I've read the website.
Yeah, and I think this one, I believe it's Z. Don't hold me to it. I think it's Measure Z this time, which will have, I think, 19 properties, 19 high density properties.
So if you know, are you able to explain? Because sometimes a no means yes and a yes means no. Is there?
No, I don't know. I think it's a yes if you want it. It's a no if you don't.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, but yeah, you're right. We better check that out, because you definitely don't want to make a mistake, and sometimes they trick you. But the goal is not to trick anybody. It's to be very upfront about it, and that's why they'll do a website from the city and try to show you all the ideas where they get these numbers and where they're going to go.
All right. Now, I mentioned earlier about the pandemic and COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? How do you feel about how the city of Yorba Linda responded to the pandemic?
Well, I mean, I have two views of it, because I was a resident, during this time, and we felt as shut down as anybody else, to me. And I was very concerned about some of the stuff coming down from the state, which was really shutting everything down. And I understand why, just like you said, 2 weeks to slow down the curve, or whatever. I understood the short-term part of it. We didn't know what was coming, and it was serious. I mean, definitely people died. We all had friends that died, and it's very unfortunate. But we didn't know, good, bad, or indifferent, what was happening. It was just lockdown, because that's all we know right now. And what's very concerning about that is that we do need to always fight for local control on these kind of things. It's very important. And so to me, these decisions always need to be made locally, and you can't necessarily have a state or federal government telling you what to do, particularly when it comes to your own individual desires, and also like for business owners. Mm-hmm. I just felt like it was really wrong for a lot of things to be imposed upon them that could cause them to lose their business. And some of these businesses in Yorba Linda, I don't know how they did it. I think it's amazing that they're still here, and I'm so grateful that they are, because they're great businesses and they deserve to be here. But they were absolutely shut down and for sure affected. And I know that the city tried to do a lot of things, and some of the things that they did do, and I do need to get out there more to the businesses and the business owners to talk to them. And I recently joined the Chamber of Commerce, so I could try to sit with them at some lunches and get some of their feedback on this. But certainly I believe the businesses, it's their opportunity to say, okay, we're going to require masks, or we're not going to require masks. And in their case, it's like a 50-50, because if they require masks, then they're going to lose half their customers. If they don't require masks, they're going to lose half their customers, right? I mean, that's just kind of how it went. It was a very sad thing, but at the same time, that's how I believe. And if you're a restaurant on the beach, and you want to do the no shirt, no shoes, no service, that might not be the best decision. Not be the best decision on the beach there to keep your business customers. But at the same time, it's your choice to do that as a business. And to me, it just seemed like very heavy-handed on what the government was forcing these businesses to do, when it should have been their decision and individuals to do. And if an individual wants to wear a mask or not, that's completely up to them. That's fine. Except for I do think the business should have the opportunity to say, okay, you're not coming in the door without a mask or whatever. That's up to them. So that's what I believe. As far as what the city goes, I think they stayed kind of out of that whole game, and I think they did try to give more control to the businesses, which is good. But I would like to have also seen them fight a little bit more on the local level. The one thing that I know our city did do was we created like a grant program for businesses to help keep them afloat. Oh, wow. So in addition to the federal funds that these small businesses qualified for, and I don't know all the details about how much they qualified or how it helped them survive, because sometimes it was like it may only be 3 months of rent, and they are affected way more than that. And some of them were still paying employees even though they weren't working, because they're just good-hearted people. But our city did a $2.5 million grant to businesses that was in basically 2,500, I think, businesses got $10,000 each. So they could apply for a $10,000 grant. I'm trying to do my math here. 250 businesses, $10,000 each. Mm-hmm. And so that helps a lot of people, because that's another couple months of rent, in addition to the federal funds and that sort of thing. So our city tried to do those kind of things to help the businesses. And I'm sure it helps some of them stay into business. And I think that's very important, because Yorba Linda right now, most of our businesses are successful, and they are, we don't have a lot of open space for leasing new restaurants or offices. Everything's pretty full, so we don't have a lot of vacancy, and so I think it's a good symbol that we're here to stay, and the businesses that are here are kind of thriving now, or they're coming back, and they survived the hardest times. So I give the city a lot of credit for that, but sometimes I just wish that when you feel like the next level of government is being heavy-handed, it's your job as a local government to fight them on behalf of your residents. That's something that I believe local government is all about. And so I want to see more of that in the future when it comes to things like RENA numbers, or God forbid, if there is another pandemic of that sort, where we're just making sure that we're making these decisions more locally.
Awesome. Now, the other day, brought up a question to one of the city council members, again, at a meeting that I was at, and it had to do with stuff that's happening at the school boards and the school district. And her answer, let's say this, his or her answer.
Good covert transition.
Was that the city council stays out of school district issues.
So you narrowed it down to 3 people.
And so I just thought, wow, I mean, I don't know that you can, I guess you can, and I just don't know. Maybe they have to stay out. I'm not really sure, but we have charter school issues. We got crime issues that all still involve school district, SRO, school resource officers. Maybe the city council could have a hand in that, in talking to the sheriffs or making it more available, either through a grant or some way of getting more school resource officers in to protect the students that live in the community. It's not necessarily just a school district thing. So how do you feel about just staying out of the school districts, or as opposed to, there's some issues that the city council could get involved in?
Yes and no. I completely agree. So the answer that I have is you're absolutely right. There's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of opportunities to partner with the school district, and that's something we should definitely do. Now, as a trustee for the community colleges, I've had the city of Fullerton interviewing with my business a couple of times, and that I didn't appreciate at all. And I was kind of like, mind your own business. Has nothing to do with the city. It has to do with my community college. And so again, I'm fighting for my local control. Because if they're overstepping their bounds, which they try to do sometimes, issues like zoning and other things where the community college has its own ability to do that. And so a couple times I told them to go fly a kite. But at the same time, you also need to be good partners with people that if you're in the city as a school district or whatever. And you're absolutely right. There's a lot of overlap in areas of crime. We both have sheriff's officers. The sheriff's resource officers. It's amazing. We live in the best community. We have the best schools, but there's a ton of crime in our schools. And I don't want to say these kids are criminals, but the reality is, if you even take an illicit drug, that's a criminal activity. And so a lot of innocent kids who are getting straight A's or doing everything right, playing sports or whatever, if they're taking some horrible narcotic, or even if they're taking a prescription drug, but it's not their prescription, that's illegal. Right. And so our sheriff's resource officers are crucial for that kind of thing. And obviously that overlaps and spills into our community. They're part of our community. So we should, of course, be partnering with our school district very carefully or very closely on those kind of matters. But yeah, I definitely believe in staying in our lane. I don't believe in stepping on their toes if it's not something that we don't have to get involved in. But if I'm hearing that the residents are screaming for charter schools or this or that program, I certainly wouldn't mind approaching those people, colleague to colleague. And I actually have a good relationship with some of the school board members as well. And they're open. I'd be open to what they say, and they'd be open to what I say. So, but that's something that for sure our city should be partnering, and Placentia and Anaheim also should be partnering with our school district. But definitely in areas of crime, and some of these other areas. Now, maybe you could say charter schools or something like that. They may be overstepping, but I do believe that they have a job to do, and I want to respect their roles and responsibilities. But things that relate to my city or my residents, I definitely want to get involved in and partner with, and especially when it comes to areas like crime. I think that's very important, because if our kids are taking drugs or drinking at school or anything like that, it's obviously going to spill into it's not like that just stops at the end of the campus boundaries.
Right. I can say all the time, it's like, for several hours during the day, a school is like a city of adults and children running around and doing different things, and crime finds its way in there. But they're not a separate city. Yeah, it's still Yorba Linda or Placentia or Fullerton or Anaheim, wherever the school is.
And don't get me wrong, I think our schools are the best there is. I just think this is everywhere, unfortunately. And you hear all the time of people who have died because they didn't even know what drugs they were taking, and all of a sudden they're gone. And it's really tragic. And I mean, this stuff happened when I was in school too. But now I have my second high schooler going through high school, and I definitely have seen it. I've definitely seen it around, and I've heard about it, and I've talked to parents about stories, and it's definitely something you can't deny is happening. So as good as our community is, as good as our people are, as good as our parents are, I think out there, this stuff is happening, and we definitely need to stop it. And the best thing that could happen to these kids is that they get caught. Right. Because they have a chance to turn their lives around before they do take something completely deadly or get their lives off track, and all of a sudden they can't go to college anymore because they fried their brain somehow.
Yeah, well, I was a police officer for 21 years at Anaheim, and there's two ways of handling an area, and that is either a response to crime type of situation, or a crime avoidance situation where you're putting enough officers in a location to keep crime from happening. We do that at the city at the oh my gosh, at the hockey games over at Honda Center. If it's still called the Honda Center, I don't even remember anymore.
I think it is.
The convention center. We put 15 officers there during an event for the same reason, because you have an influx of people that are there for a period of time, and things can happen. Not to mention alcohol is there. Hopefully there's no alcohol, but there is definitely drugs and probably some alcohol at these schools. And so we do it for a whole lot of other things, and we don't do it for our schools, which is really strange. And we know just in LA, just last week, a 15-year-old was found dead in the girls' restroom from fentanyl poisoning. And they had to go look for the boy that gave her the fentanyl. And so these things are happening, and we have children dying in our community right now. And this is just an unprecedented time that we probably need to look at things a little bit differently. Just because other districts aren't doing it and other cities aren't doing it doesn't mean that we can't do it. Why not avoid the crime as opposed to responding to the crime? It's two different ways of doing it.
And I believe the sheriffs have the exact same view. I mean, they know what's going on there, and they think that prevention is the key. And what is it, like 3 grains of salt equivalent is like enough to kill you for fentanyl? It's nothing. And so it's very sad. But and that's
what it looks like. The one in the middle is the fentanyl. That's a dime, and that's what it looks like.
Wow.
How much it'll kill you. And some people, just officers have died from touching it. The pill that's laced with it.
I know. That's horrible. So that's exactly right. And fortunately, being in Yorba Linda and having the sheriff's department as our resource is a big deal. And when there was protests a couple years back, we had a huge showing of force from the Orange County sheriffs, way before there was any violence or anything like that. We had so many people out there that there was never going to be anything really out of control, because it was all, like you said, it's prevention. It's like before it happens, not wait till after all the windows are smashed. And so we do that, but we definitely need to do that in the schools. It's really important. And this stuff was even common when I was in high school. But I think I benefited from being the DARE generation. I think they said, what was it? The Say No to Drugs campaign. They said caused more people to take drugs. But for whatever reason, that worked for me and a lot of my friends. We didn't do drugs, and all that kind of stuff worked for us, and we just never did it. I guess the egg frying on the pan or whatever, all that stuff worked for me too. We didn't try for any of that. We didn't try any of that. So
my son will go, "You didn't try any drugs?" I go, "What does that mean? Why are you asking me this?" But no, I would have been, at the time, you could not get hired as a police officer if you did any drugs. They give you polygraph and blood tests and all that kind of stuff. Now it's not the same. Because it's so prevalent in our world right now. But fortunately, it's just nothing. If I felt it was felt good, I knew that it was dangerous. I don't know where I got that from. But exactly. I knew, that feels too good. I'm not doing it again. All right, let's get to how do you think the city's doing operationally? Maybe we've touched on that, but maybe there's something.
A little bit. Operationally, I think the city is doing very well. And a lot of that has to do with the city council in place, and also the leadership that we have in place. It's really important that, let me go back. I grew up watching city council meetings at Yorba Linda. I'm kind of a city council nerd. And back in the day, I remember I started watching them definitely before I was in 7th grade. And I watched them all through high school. And for a while there, it was actually more entertaining than WWF wrestling back in the day. There were so many fights between the city council members and then also the residents, and people would give their speeches. And it was just, it was almost like a food fight or something. It was so exciting to watch. And sometimes I'd do my homework while I was watching these council meetings. So things have definitely changed. we definitely have our residents who are engaged, who write speeches and get up there and speak passionately and but they give really good contributions, to and feedback to the council members on how they should be governing. But our city council also is more cohesive and more friendly, and so we don't have those kind of fights. But so I think that overall everything is going very well. Operationally, is more, what the city council is doing and also the city manager. And like I said, we are on top of things. I mean, they are paying down unfunded pension liabilities. They're paving roads on time, they're trimming trees on time. And the thing is, if you stay on a schedule and you keep things on like clockwork, then you actually save the city a lot of money, because the cities allow their things to go into disrepair. Think about it. If you should be trimming trees and you're not, you skip it for 10 or 12 years or whatever, then you have to pay double to get that trimmed now. You have to pay double to pave your roads now because you didn't take care of it before it got sunbeaten to the point where there's potholes everywhere. And so in a lot of ways, we're really blessed in this city, and they're doing a lot of things right. But what I know I'll bring to the table is also like a diverse view that brings an alternate view that just because we're friends or friendly or anything like that, I have no problem speaking out about anything that I see that needs to be improved. And I think we all need to do that. I think even if you're a city council people that are 5 similar thinking people, you need to bring your own ideas to the table. And that's something that I've always been able to do, and I always will do. And so that's what I look forward to bringing.
Awesome. I know we've talked about a lot of different things, but do you see any things that you can improve upon within the city, whether it's residentially or business-wise?
Well, I know business-wise, I mean, they're doing actually a lot of great things. I mean, having Target come in is a big deal, into the Orchard Supply Hardware building. That's going to be a really big deal for the city. And to be able to get a major retailer like that is kind of an indication of business health, because there has been, over the years, turnover of some major businesses, but that's a huge one to get in. And so it'll bring in a lot of tax revenue. For me, the biggest thing that can be instantly improved is one of the things I already mentioned, which is just educating the public and more town halls, being in front of people and hearing what their concerns are and figuring out how to address it. And maybe their concerns aren't necessarily what's going on. They just don't completely understand what's going on because we're not telling them enough. And so I think we need to have both of that. We need to have that feedback of people that if they're passionate like about no rezoning, then I want to know what's their thinking, why not, or where not, is it one project or is it all of these? And then tell them where we're coming from, and then kind of say, well, would you like the state to take it over? Or do you think we should have a say on what it looks like and how to respond to it and how to serve it and how to deal with the traffic and the fire and all that kind of stuff? Because if the state takes it over, and right now on our housing element plan, we're classified as conditionally approved. And we're conditionally approved based on people voting to approve these projects. But whether they do or not, to me as a city council member, it's our job then to take that vote and stand up for our people. And if they're against it, then we need to also fight against it on their behalf. But we just think that ultimately, from what I understand, it's going to be a losing battle against the state. And we do need to ultimately retain that control so that we can decide how these beautiful projects are happening, because otherwise they could be very ugly and very not have the kind of element that we want them to be. And we've already been dealing with that kind of fight against the county at times. And sometimes we lose those battles too. I think the city just lost a lawsuit as well, where we don't have as much control. And it does deal with safety because the city is trying to get more roads, more access. And the county, if they win their lawsuit or whatever, they can shut those kind of things down. Well, that's the same kind of thing the state can do. If we feel like there's a particular area that's unsafe, if it goes their way, it's our job to fight against it, but we could also lose. And if we lose, then they get their way. So it's a very difficult balancing act to do. I think we all want to retain our low density heritage in our city. It's really important. And we definitely don't want to have any big projects that cause any housing to lose their value, whether it be like spillover parking or just being unsightly or whatever else. We want everything that comes into our city to be an asset and not a burden. And so I know it has to be very carefully done. And I think our city's trying to tiptoe that line. But I'm just saying internally, I would be trying to get the best projects I possibly could that people would want to vote for, that are going to be nice, that also try to comply with the state. But in the background, I also want to fight for that low density heritage and say, hey, Rena, you can't increase our numbers by 360%.
Right.
We need to fight against that. So we need to do everything we can do to kind of walk that line.
I always say that it feels like Sacramento's trying to LA our OC.
They are.
And
that's what they want.
And they're really unfair in so many of the things that I'm hearing, that they're forcing our city to do a lot of things that they're not forcing some of these other cities to do.
Okay.
And to me, it feels like he must be, the guy I'm talking about, must be upset that we tried to recall him. And Yorba Linda is one of the few cities that overwhelmingly voted for the recall. And sometimes I feel like that might be an issue. It may not be true, but that's how I feel.
Yeah. Well, definitely needs to be equity, but for some of these things like the housing numbers, it's tough because they're doing it to everybody. I mean, and they're doing it to Los Angeles and everybody else, to my knowledge. And so when you talk about like Anaheim, or it's good to put all the high density in Anaheim, I don't want to be that kind of person too, like not in my backyard.
Yeah. No.
But at the same time, you know that they got a big number. If we got a big numbers increase, they got a huge numbers increase. And so we're all dealing with this, and but we definitely need to resist the state where we can. And there's definitely cities like ours. So to me, it's more of like class action type things, partnering with cities of like minds and trying to resist where we can, and then comply where we can't resist. But so far, it's been a losing battle, and we also don't want to be a city that has a $45 million budget that spends $20 million of it on losing lawsuits,
right,
when we could be improving our city. So there's a balancing act. I just want you to know I'm on the same page as all of you. We want to save our city and make it as good as we can, and we want it to be better than ever. But we're also fighting against a big giant beast who we're not afraid to try to slay, but we got to be very smart about it.
Yeah, that's one of my points at the school board also, is that I'm looking for candidates that are willing to push back a little bit. I've seen churches that have done it during the pandemic. They were being forced to close and they refused, and they fought back, and they won the lawsuit. So it's not unprecedented or not one of those things that you can't do. Just because they're Sacramento or the federal government doesn't mean that they're doing what is right. We know that for sure. Yes. And so there are avenues that we have and ways that we can push back a little bit and see what it is that we can do to save not only our city but our country. Yeah.
Well, Andy, I'm boldly fearless, but I'm not stupid. So it's one of those things you got to balance it, right? I'm not foolish, or I'm not going to gamble with our people's money, but we definitely want to be very intelligent in the way we fight, but we need to fight.
Awesome. Is there anything that I haven't touched on yet that you think that people need to know about you or what you're going to bring to the city council?
On the city council issues, I think you've kind of covered it. I really could use anybody's help that is willing to. So please visit my website at www.ryanbent.org, RYANBENT.org. And I am looking for people who are willing to volunteer and walk for me and everything else. But I have an incredible group of volunteers already, and they're doing amazing work. So we're just going to continue to do that. I want people to know that my goal is to become everybody's first choice candidate. I'm very much a grassroots candidate. I probably have the least amount of money to spend in this race compared to my competition. But to me, money hasn't been the difference maker in my last two elections. I don't think it'll be the major difference maker here. When you have grassroots support, you kind of feel the momentum going on. Yep. And I'm really excited to be running. So I just need to continue that and get the word out. That's the biggest thing, because my opponents will definitely be able to afford mailer after mailer after mailer and Facebook ad after Facebook ad. And that's very different than the way I'll be doing it. But hopefully I'm number one on your ballot, and I hope to earn your vote.
Awesome. I have the link for your website in the description, so people can just scroll down and find it, or look up, one of the two. It depends on what you're watching on, and just click on that link. And I'm fully aware that earlier I had the name swapped. I was looking at it from a different angle.
Okay. I don't know if hopefully my name tag is reading correctly, my sign here. Andy, can I mention one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that differentiates me from my two opponents, I believe, is that I will not take any money from contractors, builders, or unions. And I think that's really important, because you need to have a candidate with integrity who's going to be on the city council, who's not influenced by any outside forces. So far, all my support has been from Yorba Linda residents, and who are generous enough to write a check, and writing a check knowing that they'll get nothing in return from me except for somebody who's willing to do good governance and to be a strong city council person, but who will not do any personal favors for them or anything like that. And I will not take money from builders or anybody who's actually looking to work with the city or union to negotiate with the city. And it's not not to offend them in any way or anything like that, but it's one of those things that I just feel like it biases the process, and I've never done that. And so I completely disagree with doing that. And I think that when a lot of those businesses write out checks for thousands of dollars, Andy, they kind of think that they're going to get a chance to bid on a project and win. And that's very dangerous. That's not the kind of people that we want representing us, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I had this thought that was going through my head when you were talking earlier about the conflict of interest that there potentially might be with city council members. I've heard it. I just don't know enough to ask you reliably to put you in a position to have to speak poorly about another person.
No, and I like our city council men, and I like Janice, who I'm running against as well. The bottom line is I'm going to be serving on the board with one of these two. I hope if I'm elected, and if not, we're all going to be working together anyway, because I'm a city commissioner. Janice is a city commissioner. Carlos is the current mayor. He's a city council member. And so we're all going to be involved in the city, win or lose. We're the kind of people that will definitely be here. But I'm just saying, me personally, I have high ethical standards. I think it's really important. It's one of the reasons why I'll be significantly outspent. But but I'm proud of that, because to me, if that's what it takes to win, I won't win. But I am here to win. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to fight every single day, and I'm going to work really hard for the next several weeks to get elected. But I'm going to do so in a different way. And it's a way that I think all elected officials should do, and they just don't.
All right. Well, make sure and do that. Make sure and look at his website. And then if you can help in any way, I had a friend of mine who contacted me over the weekend, and he lives in an area with Rich Engel, who's running for school board. And I connected them, and immediately he went out and visited 30 or 40 houses within the area that he's running. So,
wow.
And he goes, the people loved what he had to say about Rich, and they didn't know who to vote for, and didn't even know Rich was running. Yeah. But he was able to go there and explain the difference between one candidate and the other. And they go, oh, we're definitely voting for Rich. Yep. But that's what it takes to get out there and be out there with the residents. Yeah. And
well, I just want to say real quick, the incumbents have a big advantage. The incumbents have a huge advantage. And so whenever you're a newcomer, it takes a lot more education out there, because people aren't used to checking your box. And so I appreciate all the candidates out there running who are working really hard and going door to door and getting those relationships going, because you're trying to overcome somebody who's been there for 20 years or 30 years. But the reality is, people should get elected 4 years at a time. And you should always look back 4 years and figure out, what have they done these last 4 years? And do they deserve to keep that job? And when I'm in this job, I'm trying to run for the next 4 years, and I'm going to try to earn another 4 years and another 4, but I'm going to give you my all for 4 years. And after that, it's up to me to earn it again. And so I know Rich and Todd are up against people where they need to earn it. But Todd and Rich are coming in as new people saying, hey, they don't deserve to be reelected. You need to consider me. So I respect the new candidates and what they're doing. And I think people need to just be willing to listen.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time coming over to the house and doing this. And again, if you can go to his website and just check it out, and maybe even send it to some of your friends, I always say 10 friends. Find 10 friends that can use the information that it is that you have, and give it to them so they can make a wise decision, which is going to be him. Thank you. And quite honestly, if I would have decided to run and you were running, I would have voted for you anyway. So it wouldn't have mattered.
Oh, come on. Don't discount yourself, Andy. We could use you someday.
Jacqueline, I just want to let you know that we talk extensively about rezoning. So you're going to want to make sure, as soon as we get done, is to click the replay button, and you'll be able to hear all about the rezoning. But thank you for joining us. And anybody else that's commenting, feel free to comment, even if you're watching the replay. I'll get the questions to Ryan, or you may even see him on social media if anybody wants to comment. So thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to listen about what Ryan has to offer. And it's fantastic. All right, let's go forward and vote November 8th for Ryan for City Council Yorba Linda. All right, take care, my friends. God bless.